Oh, thank you. Is that better? Thank all of you, particularly who have come in from out of town to our activities today. I know that every one of you knows that we're here to honor a great man. And I've known John well now for about 2.5 months, which is probably less time than any of you have known John. Now, I did meet John before that as in part of my activities here at IC Squared. And the first time I met John, I thought, this guy could talk me into selling my own mother. He's so good. And over the last couple of months, working with John, I've come to realize just how fine of a man he truly is. And John, I'm going to say something that, tell a little story that happened privately between me and you, if you don't mind. When John got wind of this surreptitious effort to put this event on, he was quite concerned about it and was not so sure if he wanted to do it. And he came into my office upstairs, our office really, here at IC Squared, and said, I don't know why they're doing this. I'm not dead yet. And I said, and I had already talked to Karen about this event and understood the reasons why, and he was really thinking hard about whether it was the right thing to do at this time in his life, and whether he really deserved the tribute that you're all going to pay to him today. And I said something to him that we don't talk much about, I think, in public life, but nonetheless I think it's true. I said, John, all of these people want to pay this tribute to you because they love you and they appreciate what you've done for them over the years, and you have to let them do that. And he thought for a moment and said, okay. And so here we are. We don't have to do it behind his back, but we certainly can have an opportunity to make fun of him, too, later. And with that said, let me just welcome you again. I think it's a privilege to have this event. It's a privilege for me to work with John. And before we start, let me just take a minute here early in the day, I know we'll do this later, to thank Karen for all the effort that she put in to make this event happen. And you can all pat her on the back later, but I did want to mention that it's been a lot of work. And again, I want to thank all of you for being here. And have a good day, and let's remember this guy. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Karen Starks, Canada, and as Alex said, I am the coordinator of this symposium. I would like to thank all of you for being here today. It's been a labor of love over the last year or so while putting together the symposium. We are here today to honor the work of John Sibley Butler in his role as scholar, entrepreneur, and mentor. Today you will hear from researchers, entrepreneurs, and former students. You will hear them discuss their work and how John has influenced their work. Their words will hopefully encourage you to do research on African American entrepreneurship and also to become entrepreneurs yourselves. We are here to honor John's work, but make no mistake, we're here to honor the man as well. John will tell you he is too young and too good-looking to have a symposium in his honor. That's what I've heard over the last year. But I know many of you will agree with me when we say that this honor is long overdue. We're here to honor the man because John was courageous when he wrote his book, Entrepreneurship and Self-Help Among Black Americans, A Reconsideration of Race and Economics. His book is exemplary relative to the phenomenon of entrepreneurship and created a renewed interest in African American business. So whether or not John likes it, we're here to honor him as well as his work. Before we begin the tributes this morning, I would like to personally thank those persons who have been instrumental in helping me organize this symposium. I would like the following persons to please stand. Madison James Foster II, Jay Klein, Sherry Gonzalez, Coral Frankie, Shannon Cormier, Mark Sandifer, and Derek Robinson. I think they're back in the back room. I don't know if they hear me. Hey, guys. I could not have done the symposium without all of you. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round. Also, this symposium would not have been possible without financial support. I would especially like to thank Provost Eklund Olson, Dean Lavier, Dr. May, and Dr. Cavelli for funding this symposium. Thank you again. At this time, we're going to begin the tributes. Once the tributes are done, we have some tributes that are on videotape, and once the tributes are finished, we will take a break, and the conference beginning at 10 o'clock is going to be video conferenced. Let me explain that to 3 different universities. So part of this interchange is going to be handled with students at Auburn University, Morehouse College, and Houston-Tillotson. So at 10 o'clock, about quarter to 10, we're going to stop this part of the conference, break, let them set up the video conferencing, make sure everything is hooked up between the 3 universities, and then promptly at 10, we'll start with our panel discussion. Okay, thank you.
Everyone here at Northwestern is so proud of you. But I wanted to tell, the audience there that how did John and I first get to know each other? Back in the Vietnam War, I received this letter from one John Butler, an enlisted man in Vietnam, saying he read about this military sociology and thinks it would be very interesting to do something in that field. And as a college graduate, he was looking toward a PhD and could he come to Northwestern. That was probably one of the most fortunate letters I ever received in my life. John and I worked together on many different projects and issues. And of course, he also made an independent name as the leading scholar on black entrepreneurs. But John and I also co-authored a book called All That We Can Be, Black Leadership and Racial Integration the Army Way, in which Colin Powell says, a magnificent book. Every American, white or black, military or civilian, who cares about building healthy race relations in our country ought to read. I'm there with you in spirit.
Oh, I'm just teasing. I mean, how many times do you see them guys with the micro blam, blam, blam? But you don't have any out of the water.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Crazy stuff.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Is that it? The circle? Thank you. Sarko, can you? Thank you.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to speakers, might have a question, I want you to jot it down.
Good morning, Morehouse. Can you hear me? Wave your hands if you can hear me. Morehouse. Can you hear me? Please raise your hand. I see squared. If you can hear me on the third floor, please raise your hand. Houston Tillotson, if you can hear me, please raise your hand. Here you are. And Morehouse, can you hear me?
UT Austin, can you turn up your outbound audio?
We'll try to. Just a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, thank you.
Auburn, can you hear me? Please raise your hand.
Who's back there, you?
No.
It's whoever's got the floor at the top. Alright, I'm gonna go down, if I can get it. I don't think we recorded it all down.
If y'all don't have a question, y'all need to have your systems on mute. Testing. Actually, you're getting feedback because
It's wonderful money, which it is. Hold on to this. But how about this? That was impromptu, and I just asked you to change when I asked them to write it down.
Testing.
I'm not even putting out that myself.
That kind of feedback.
I know it's a good question. How do I say it? How do I say it? I just want to know how to,
Good morning, Morehouse. Can you hear me?
You go over that like that.
That's only one.
That's like my idea. I said that.
That happens.
I know. With Morehouse and UT watching.
I'm gonna read it.
I believe I may be saying goodbye to you all and joining you on the first floor of IC Squared. Stand by.
No, I have the mute on. They can't hear you. Just pick what's beyond. It's okay, but just when you start talking, turn them off. You need to ask a question. Don't worry, I got the mute on.
Okay, good morning, Houston Tillotson. If you can hear me, please raise your hand. Good morning, Houston. Okay. There's a good line. Good morning, Auburn. If you can hear me, please raise your hand. And good morning, Morehouse. If you can hear me, please raise your hand.
All right. All right.
Did you tell the part of the panel about holding down the button? Welcome to the panel for Dr. John Sibley Butler.
Hello out there. Are we the only ones hearing echoes?
Can you raise your hand if you're hearing an echo?
If you're hearing an echo, would you raise your hand, please? It's just us. If you heard that question, would you raise your hand, please? Okay, thanks. Well, why did I not hear an echo when I did that?
It's been that way.
Can we good?
Maybe that.
Do you want me to try this?
Yeah, say so.
Good morning and welcome to the panel forum for Dr. John Butler, Scholar. It's better than with that.
Yeah.
Use that?
Yeah, use that.
Okay, good morning and welcome to the panel forum for Dr. John Sibley Butler. My name is Shannon Cormier, and I am currently a graduate student of Dr. Butler's. I've known him since I was an undergrad, 17 years old. And even back then, it was a long time ago, he never missed an opportunity to tell me how good looking he was. I remember the first time he said that as a professor. So, what kind of guy is this? But I'm so pleased to be here, and I'd like to just welcome you all today. I would like to introduce the moderators for the video conferencing. If you could raise your hand when I call your name. Dr. Janice Sumler Edmond, Houston Tillotson College. Dr. Monty Whitney, Morehouse College. And Dr. Don Terry Veal, Auburn University. Okay. I would like to also welcome the audience here at IC Squared in Austin, Texas, that is composed of students from the University of Texas History Department, as well as Houston Tillotson College. In addition, we also have local entrepreneurs and researchers, so welcome. I will begin by introducing our panel here at IC Squared. We'll begin on this end to my left, beginning with Dr. John Sibley Butler, University of Texas at Austin. Then we have Dr. Karen Canada, University of Alabama. We then have Dr. Thomas Boston, Georgia Institute of Technology. On this side, we have Dr. Jan Christopher, Delaware State University, Dr. Cedric Herring, University of Illinois, Chicago, and finally, Dr. Juliet Walker, University of Texas at Austin. I will remind you, if you do have a question, we ask for you to please push the touch panel in front of you and hold it down while you are speaking. At this point, we will open up the floor for questions. I apologize. We will, at this point, ask for a brief introduction from each of our panel members, beginning with Dr. John Sibley Butler.
Good morning. How's Morehouse doing? I have an affinity for Morehouse being on the research board. Eugene Harris, how's Auburn doing? Is Auburn doing okay? And let me just say that they asked me to talk about research, and let me just kind of mention how it got started. Actually, at the time when entrepreneurship in America was not doing too well. And Alex Portes and I, who was here, Alex was here in Texas, and now he's at Princeton. And so we started looking at what we call entrepreneurship groups, and Alex looked at the immigrant Cubans in Miami. And I began to look at the history of black entrepreneurship, not only from a historical perspective, but also from a theoretical perspective. And so the question was, what about the intellectual property, that is all of the inventions? How were those enterprises incubated, much like Delacroix does now up in Philadelphia? How did they get started? What was the impact of family and friends? But more importantly, to establish the fact that within the American context, black entrepreneurship was not only strong, but also created communities. Using the work of Juliet Walker, who was also here, and Booker T. Washington, and others, I think that the whole idea was to start a research tradition which integrated the black experience with the immigrant experience in America. That is, we started to look at immigration not only from the Far East, if you will, but also immigration during the Revolution. So when Castro said there would be a new Havana, he did not know that it was going to be in Florida. So consequently, Alex Portes and I, and a guy by the name of Ken Wilson, we started theoretical traditions of how to not only look at entrepreneurship, but how to revitalize black entrepreneurship in America. And of course, here at the IC4 Institute, we were also concerned with building companies at that time. And George Kosmeski, in his introduction, mentioned Pakistanis. Well, we put together a study of the Pakistanis. It was Patricia Jean Green and myself. You were involved in that one. And we studied not only the creation of business, but also the incubation of those enterprises. And the question was, how do you start? How do you start an enterprise? And how do you do well in the context, if you will, of a social situation? That message to different parts of the country. Keenan Grinnell, of course, runs the African American Summit at Auburn University. Bob Woodson has the National Center for Neighborhood Enterprise in Washington, D.C., working with the immigrants here in Texas. Sada Kamber has really established the Pakistani group here. Now there's an Hindu group that kind of grew out of that. And so the whole idea is to look at the research on entrepreneurship, but not only the research, really start the incubation process. So from the black, because it was coming out of the civil rights movement, it was coming out of a time when people were not necessarily concerned with what I call wealth creation and entrepreneurship. So it is good to be here to discuss that entrepreneurship in the context of American entrepreneurship, which has really flourished since then also. There was no Silicon Valley, there was no Austin, Texas, there was no Route 128 in Boston. So the whole idea is to do the research and let the entrepreneurs essentially do well in the context of those situations.
I conducted my research on the entrepreneurs that existed in Atlanta. My research study was done in 1999, and what I was interested in was finding out what types of entrepreneurs existed in an urban setting. One of the things that I was able to look at, particularly based on Butler's work, was the concept of self-help among urban entrepreneurs. So I not only looked at self-help, but I also looked at what I found historically was that a lot of these entrepreneurs were also facilitators in social change. So when I started to research the entrepreneurs in the area, I found that they were actively involved in self-help. They hired the local residents. They provided community services, and they networked and purchased from other entrepreneurs in the urban area. As far as their relationship to social change, I found that most of these entrepreneurs had organic links to the urban community. They either lived in the urban community themselves or had family members who were in the urban community, and so they had a lot of interest in terms of what happened in the urban areas. They were also involved in local community organizations and institutions, and then they were the facilitators in vanguard protests. A lot of the entrepreneurs that still exist in the Atlanta area have been there and were there during the civil rights movement. And what we found that even though they may or they may not have been part of the active protest during the civil rights era, what they did was provide financial support to the civil rights protesters during that time in terms of lawyers and things of that nature. In looking at the group of entrepreneurs, I was able to discern that there were three types of entrepreneurs. Of course, these aren't exclusive types, but I found the three were emerging business owners, the indigenous entrepreneurs, and the corporate purveyors. And I just want to briefly kind of share some of the findings for each. The emerging business owners were the ones that were involved in new trends in business, computer technology and things like that. They usually had their business in residential areas. They had limited access to city and government contracts. They were only in business for 1 to 5 years, and they were either the sole employee or had very few employees involved in their business. The indigenous entrepreneurs were involved in service businesses, such as retail stores, restaurants, and things like that. Primarily, their businesses were in the residential areas. They also had little access to city and government contracts. And they were in business for 5 to 25 years, and they had an average of 1 to 15 employees. The corporate purveyors were private industry partners in such companies as transportation and car dealerships. Their businesses were in the central business districts. They had good access to city and government contracts, were in business 10 to 15 years, and had an average of 10 to 20 employees. So when we're looking at these types of entrepreneurs that existed in the urban area, we were looking at how do we support these entrepreneurs so that they're able to continue in business, because one of the things that we found that most of them did employ people from the urban area, and we know that that's a high area with high unemployment. And what we found was that, of course, the corporate purveyors were able to employ a much larger number of people. But we found that the group that really needed the most support were the indigenous entrepreneurs, and in support I mean that they were the ones that not only employed local residents, but they were in business for up to 25 years, and the communities really depended on them. So in my research, I found that if we're going to assist any group of entrepreneurs, that we need to assist the indigenous entrepreneurs to having greater access to government contracts, because they were the ones that were the most strongly linked to the community, and the community really depended on not only their businesses, but other types of services that they provided to the community.
professor of economics at Georgia Tech, also a business owner. And we were asked, first of all, let me say how honored I am to be a part of the conference, which is honoring John Butler, and honoring really his wide-ranging contributions. And you will hear over and over again that those contributions involve his services both as a scholar in academia, as a mentor, as an entrepreneur, and also as both a national and international consultant. And in fact, one of the reasons I was so excited to come here, because as a business owner, one of the things I wanted to do when I got here was to get some free advice from John about how to run my own business, which I did. But very seriously, John is one of those rare individuals who exemplifies the sort of the truism that intellectuals who are really gifted have been able to successfully bridge the gap between both theory and practice, and that's what he's done in his life. I first came into contact with John more than John's work more than 10 years ago, and this was in regards to some research that I was asked to engage in, and this research was related to a Supreme Court decision that had some very drastic implications for the operations, growth, and development of minority-owned businesses. And this was a Croson decision, which in essence was a ruling rendered in regards to the legality of minority business contracting programs that were established all across the country. And the key issue was this, and that is whether governmental agencies have the legal justification or jurisdictions to establish certain programs that provide special assistance to minority-owned businesses. While the Supreme Court said that it is not illegal to do it, in order to do it, it also mandated that you have to undertake a sufficient and very extensive body of research to establish that those businesses have encountered discrimination both historically and in the contemporary market. And this is where I came into contact with John's work, because as a part of that, one of the things that you have to do is to both examine the historical environment within which those businesses have grown and developed, as well as to look at the contemporary market and explain the availability or lack of availability and the capacity or lack of capacity and opportunities that exist for those businesses. And John's work, his seminal work, became very, very important in that regard, because as you know, within the context of that work, he not only analyzed the whole history of the evolution of the African American community, but looking particularly at the various barriers that have existed in various periods of development, and how black entrepreneurs have developed various strategies to confront those different kinds of barriers. He also talked about the various contours that they had to go through in order to successfully survive, and the distorted development that it fostered as a result of that. But nonetheless, in looking at all of that, he also points to the success factors. That is, what are the ingredients that are necessary for these businesses to grow and succeed? And he pointed out a number of those success factors. So his work was very instrumental in assisting both me as a researcher and other teams of researchers around the country who were engaged in similar kinds of research. Let me just very quickly talk about some other research that I'm engaged in, and this research also validates empirically a lot of the other findings that John uncovered in his earlier research. And this is what's called the Gazelle Index. What is this? Well, it's a Black Business Confidence Index. I, on a quarterly basis, am currently conducting a research that looks at the performance, expectations, and confidence of the fastest growing Black-owned businesses in the country. And we survey them on a quarterly basis to find out how they feel about the current environment. But as a part of that survey, we also want to know what is happening in terms of their own practices. That is, what are the factors that are responsible for their growth? Product innovation, marketing. What are their characteristics in terms of experience and education and other kinds of issues? And these are, and it's in this latter aspect that the things that are being uncovered within the context of this research really validates a lot of things that John has been talking about in his research. For example, you might be interested to know that in terms of educational attainment, 85% of these entrepreneurs
attended college. 2/3 of them have college degrees, and 30% of them have either graduate degrees or PhDs. So attainment of higher levels of education is very important in terms of the success of fast-growing businesses. 42% of them had an immediate family member that was an entrepreneur. So again, the demonstration effect in being in a network of entrepreneurs is very important. So, and again, I won't take up all the time to do that because we have other panelists, but those are the kinds of things that we're uncovering. Also, we're looking at the relationship between the current economic market and their growth and development. And let me just leave with this thought. And Karen mentioned this in part of this thought. Karen mentioned this in her presentation. That is the contribution that African American businesses are making to employment. You might be interested to know that currently African American businesses are employing about 4.5% of the black workforce. And at the rate at which those businesses are growing and employment capacity is growing within those businesses, by the year 2010, it's estimated that they will employ about 10% of the black workforce. Now you say, well, that's small. It's not small when you look at the unemployment within the black community and the fact that these businesses, because 80% of their employment are 80% of their workers are African Americans, and they have the capacity to make a very significant impact on employment within our community.
Thank you, Dr. Christopher.
I'm Dr. Jan Christopher. I am with Delaware State University. I'm an economist by training in urban economics, and I also have an MBA. I teach both undergrad and grad at Delaware State University. And over the past 10 years since completing my PhD, I have about 3 areas that the audience might be interested in. And recently what I've been doing is that I've been working with looking at employment patterns of women who were formerly on welfare to try to help them make the transition to actual employment. And what they've been doing, they've used entrepreneurship as a stepping stone to higher paying jobs. Basically, what they're doing is they're going from being on public assistance, and then they're starting their own businesses and using their businesses when they go into regular employment to say that they do have a business, and in addition, and so some of them are now making over $30,000 with using entrepreneurship as a transitional. Also, what I've been doing is tracking information over the last 7 to 8 years with the Bank Commissioner of Delaware, and basically we look at state chartered banks, credit card banks, and finance companies. We have a number of firms that are operating in Delaware, such as Beneficial National Bank, Chase Manhattan, Citibank, Country, Greenwood Trust, JCPenney, MBNA, Transamerica. And basically we're looking at motor vehicle sales finance companies, mortgage lenders, such as Ditech.com, which is a subsidiary of GMAC, and we're looking at cash advance organizations. And what we're doing here is analyzing the proliferation of these types of finance companies over the 10-year period where the economy was in a boom. And even though we're in Delaware, because a lot of these companies are organized in Delaware, what's been happening is that we have at least 40 of the 50 states that have these types of finance companies that cross state lines. And so we're looking at the effects of credit availability on entrepreneurship as well as on poor people in general. And also in my PhD dissertation research at Howard University, I have 2 models that I would like to discuss. These particular models were funded by the Small Business Administration, the Census Bureau, as well as the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. And in the research, I developed 2 models. One was a long-term survivor model, which looked at exogenous and endogenous effects on the factors that make business owners successful, as well as the economic conditions that they face. And although minority-owned businesses only have a 2% survival rate within the communities, as Danny was saying, that they have significant force in employment in their specific minority communities. In fact, minority firms, particularly African-American firms, have about a 70% survival rate. And usually these firms will survive if they have been in business long enough to weather adverse economic conditions. An average business owner is about 43 years old or older. They're usually married. Usually it's their second or third career choice after they've worked several jobs and have gained some skills. And they have about 14 years of work experience. The problem is the initial capitalization to smooth out the cash flows to provide them with cushions to sort of hold them over during economic downturns. In these examples, the starting capital was about 65% debt. Usually the debt was on personal credit cards, from family and friends, sometimes from SBA financing or loan guarantees, and from remortgaging their homes. But they were rarely from commercial bank credit, and more of them were able to obtain commercial bank credit after 3 to 5 years of operation. And so it's this notion of initial capitalization as well as minority firms being able to get capitalization, and all this taken into account. Most of the business owners who were serious about becoming entrepreneurs had a better chance of survival if they lowered their personal debt prior to entering entrepreneurship. In the second model, the amount of initial starting capital that was necessary for the firms to be successful, using a comparative analysis of African American, Asian American, white American, as well as the Native American population, show that African Americans started their business with about $14,000 of capitalization, as compared to $27,000 for non-minority, and the Asian Americans had $43,000 of initial capitalization. Industry in which they operated, as well as household income, also played a significant role in capitalization. We found that firms with low barriers to entry, as well as heavy capital expenditures, tended to be more attractive to minority-owned businesses. Now, this leads me to what I would like to say about John Sibley Butler. Okay. In his seminal work over the last 10 years, he has drawn very heavily from many of the greats in entrepreneurship. For example, he mentions Dr. Joseph Houghton, who was actually between the 30s and the 60s, the #1 person for the U.S. government who kept government statistics on blacks, especially black business owners. And Dr. Hopkins knew everything about everyone. He could look in your face and tell you who you were, because that was his job. And it was such a pleasure to know him, and he did mention some of his work. He talked about Durham in his book. He also talked about my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We always called it Little Africa in Tulsa. And someone asked me, why did we call it Little Africa? And I said, well, if you've ever been to Africa, it is as hot in Africa as it is in Tulsa in the middle of summertime. And that's why it was called Little Africa. He mentioned about my great-grandparents who owned the garage, the movie theater, the confectionery shop, as well as the boarding house at #1 Greenwood, which is now the home of the black newspaper, the Oklahoma Eagle. He also mentioned the work of E. Franklin Frazier, who at one time was a professor at Howard University, and who espoused the myth of black entrepreneurship, which lies in their insignificance to the primary population. And if you look at statistics on minority entrepreneurship, as Sibley Butler has done, you must commend him for his courage. I think this is the second time that people talk about his courage, and his courage in analyzing the controversial events of African American entrepreneurship. And their lessons learned have taught me a lot, and could teach a lot to would-be entrepreneurs to look at the pitfalls of the past, to try to strive for excellence in the future. And so I would like to also conclude by warning the young would-be entrepreneurs about there is still credit discrimination in the capital markets. And this discrimination really does indeed exist. It is a major obstacle to minority entrepreneurship in the year 2003. And we want to also talk about them avoiding credit discrimination so they can pursue their dreams of minority entrepreneurship.
Good morning. My name is Cedric Carey, and I'm from the University of Illinois at Chicago. And many people have talked about their histories with John Sibley Butler and the influence of his work on theirs. And I actually can talk a little bit about prehistory, in the sense that I'm a collaborator who worked with him before his seminal book. And so what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit about some of that kind of work, the influence that his work has had on informing ideas, and link that not just to entrepreneurship for entrepreneurship's sake, but also to talk about the impact that it potentially can have on economic development, specifically in the African American community. What we find is that for decades, policymakers, for example, have looked to try to solve the problems of inner city distress and all kinds of challenges that lack of economic development and growth present. And so what has happened is that we have had example after example of public policy attempts that have not really been that successful. What's happened more recently, however, is that there has been a remarkable kind of consensus that has developed in terms of looking to entrepreneurship as the potential engine that can drive job development and growth and things along those lines. And so what we actually have are states that are now talking about implementing some of the kinds of policies that Professor Christopher was just talking about, where you have not only welfare to work, but welfare to entrepreneurship. And so what we also find is that many people see this as a route out of poverty. And so if that is the case, the question becomes, well, what can we do then? Not just to facilitate entrepreneurship, but to facilitate entrepreneurship that leads to job growth and development and to economic development more generally for these communities. Now, to try to answer that kind of question requires that we have some understanding of how these things unfold, how entrepreneurship itself works, and what in fact the link is between entrepreneurship and community development. And what we find is that there is a vast literature from many different disciplines that try to address this question. People in business schools, people in sociology departments, people in history, people in economics, etc. And I'm not going to try to, Lord knows, I would not try to talk about all of these kinds of approaches. But what I will do is spend just a little bit of time talking about some of the innovative approaches that John Sibley Butler has brought forth, and to talk about what some of the implications of those kinds of talks are in terms of understanding. Let me put on the table real quickly that perhaps the most predominant notion of how businesses develop, you can think of as cultural theories of entrepreneurship that basically say, well, it's that people come from certain traditions of selling and trading and things along those lines, and that if you're born into those kinds of families, then your chances of becoming an entrepreneur are much more likely, and that you'll be successful. And the implication of that is that implicit in that is the notion that, well, there must not be that kind of tradition among African Americans because their levels of entrepreneurship are lower than other groups. Professor Butler shows us quite thoroughly that this has never been the case, and that there is and has always been a quite active aspiration for business development and growth and entrepreneurship within the African American community. And he suggests that there have in fact been these obstacles that have been put in front of black business owners that, again, Professor Christopher referred to in Tulsa, where you've had actions by people who don't want to see success among African American businesses. He also talks about things like credit markets, lending markets, that provide barriers to black entrepreneurs. And the other thing that he talks about, though, and I think that this is something that maybe, some of those things are not things that we can deal with and control in terms of racist actions or discriminatory actions by either people who are in customers or people who black businesses have to engage with. But we can talk about a third aspect that John Sibley Butler does talk about, and that is the tradition of self-help within the African American community. And in particular, we can talk about the fact that, and Professor Boston alluded to, that black businesses now employ roughly 4.5% of the African American community. What we find, though, is that if in fact these numbers increase, and if, in fact, we did something like the following, if we had a greater percentage of black businesses hiring co-ethnics, that is, hiring black people, if, for example, blacks hired other blacks in their businesses at the same rate as Asians or Hispanics, or dare I say whites, you would see that there's actually the potential, and I'm not saying that this will ever actually end up this way, but there is actually the potential for there being up to like 25% of the African American community that could in fact be employed by African American establishments. And so what I'm saying is that while we can't control all of these things, and policy might direct us towards a lot of issues that are beyond the control of the African American community, there are some things that, in fact, if we followed the lead from John Sibley Butler, we would be in much better shape. So with that, I'll stop.
Hello, my name is Juliet Walker. I'm a professor in the Department of History here at the University of Texas at Austin, and a colleague of Dr. John Sibley Butler. We've known each other perhaps 10, 15, 20 years. So I am delighted to be here to join in this congratulations and honor to Dr. John Sibley Butler. I'm a historian, and I take a much, I guess, different approach to the study of black business. And my approach is to examine the conditions of black business over time. And presentism very much guides the kinds of questions I ask regarding black business. And at this particular time, I am looking at the state of black business in America, where black businesses comprise 4% of the total business establishments in the United States. But at the same time, black business receipts amount to only 0.4% of all American business receipts. I think too much emphasis is placed on, and of course this is important, comparing black business from where we were to where we are today. That is the wrong point of comparison. Black business success, performance, receipts, numbers should be compared to that of the majority population, white businesses in America. My research in black business begins with the commercial culture that existed in pre-colonial West and West Central Africa for the purpose of establishing that when people talk about African survivalism, that they have to consider that what survived among Africans brought to this country as slaves was a business tradition. This has not been emphasized. It is important because many public policy analysts today, in their attempts to explain the comparatively poor performance, and when I say comparatively, I mean in relationship to white businesses and other minority businesses, they attempt to explain that performance by emphasizing that racism is not the issue. Rather, it is the absence of a historic tradition of business participation. This is not the case. Blacks began to establish businesses as early as the 17th century, both slave and free blacks. Into the 19th century, some 20 years prior to the Civil War, we find black businesses listed in the R.G. Dunn and Company credit reports. R.G. Dunn and Company being the forerunner of Dunn and Bradstreet, which would suggest the extent to which black businesses were considered an integral part of the mainstream American business community. And interestingly enough, most of the customers of black businesses at that time were white. So prior to the Civil War, the leading black business people operated in mainstream America. We jump to the end of the 20th century, especially in the post-civil rights era, and we say that this is one of the changes for black businesses, is that black businesses now have customers beyond the black consumer market. So consequently, presentism very much guides my research in black business history. I would like to say, too, that my research began with the study of a slave entrepreneur who founded a town in 1836, becoming the first African-American town founder. And this is significant because one of the contributions made by John, and his work has been interdisciplinary, is his emphasis on the Black Wall Street. Now, many people within the black community were aware of a Black Wall Street in both Durham, North Carolina, and in Tulsa. But in his book, Self-Help and Black Entrepreneurship, a nation became aware that a black business community existed. But for those of us who have lived in urban America, Chicago is my home, and New York is another example. Scholars such as Sinclair Drake being one, have established that even when we had the urban black community as ghetto, most of the businesses were owned by people of other ethnic groups. So that's another contribution Professor John Sibley Butler has made in his examination of ethnic businesses in America, saying, we just can't stand aside and ignore the other businesses. As a historian, I look at other ethnic businesses from the perspective of why it is that you have a population of people who have been here since 1619, and in a few years, in 2019, would have lived in this country 400 years, and yet at the end of the 20th century, black business performance ranks at the bottom of all other ethnic groups. So my concerns are from a historic perspective. And when we look at it from a historic perspective, we have to begin to ask the questions, why do we see this continuity of various aspects of I guess it can be defined as racism in the American business community. And one final thing, my colleague, Professor Danny Boston, who I think I've known as long as John, emphasized that one of the reasons in looking at the larger black businesses, that what seems to distinguish many of the successful large black businesses is that their owners had some college, had college degrees or advanced degrees. But yet, if you look at the Forbes 400, and I think if I recall, that 187 of the 400 richest people in America, and there was only one black listed in the Forbes 400, Bob Johnson, who had a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana, a master's from Princeton. He's the only one listed in the Forbes 400, and he's well educated. He founded BET. but 187 of America's richest men did not go to college. So here again, if there's some kind of equity or an absence of disparity, I think we have to raise certain questions. And I think I have one more final thing to say. In my book, which I brought along for those who might be interested, The History of Black Business in America, Capitalism, Race, Entrepreneurship, I looked at black businesses in the 20th century and established what I call 4 waves in the rise of black corporate America. Black corporate America being defined as the larger black businesses. As you probably know, there are some 830,000 black businesses. Only 8 million have receipts of over $1 million. Half of black businesses earn less than $10,000. But since we're constantly applauding the successes of large black businesses, I think we have to look at why many of these businesses, especially those that have been historically successful in the hair care products industry, publishing, and so forth, are being purchased, or interest has been brought into these businesses. So Professor Butler has focused on incubators, and I just wonder if our large black businesses have become the incubators for white corporate America. That is, our businesses become so successful and they're bought out. So these are the larger questions that a historian considers. We don't have to think about models and of the kinds of things that economists and sociologists, we look at their results and say, okay, this is why these kinds of things happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to all of our panelists. Dr. Butler certainly has inspired a wide range of research interests. As you can tell, I'm sure that their explanations of the research have also inspired a lot of questions from our audience members, and so at this point we will open up the floor for questions.
Canada. You identified three types of businesses in the Atlanta area. Were you able to, through your research, were you able to reveal whether or not those businesses, which businesses rather had a better continuity and rate? And number two, did those businesses, or which businesses rather, of the three types, had succession plans? Succession strategies. For continuation.
Let me first say, if I didn't introduce myself properly, I'm Karen Starks, Canada. I'm at the University of Alabama School of Social Work. I think I'm one of the few social workers who is writing in the area of entrepreneurship. And one thing I do want to say is that part of that is because of the support that I received from Dr. Butler when I decided to do my dissertation on African American entrepreneurship. In answering the question in terms of looking at what I found in terms of was not really looking at businesses, but I typed the types of entrepreneurs that existed. So what I found was the emerging entrepreneur, the indigenous entrepreneur, and the corporate purveyor as a type that existed as far as a group. You were asking in terms of the ones that were there in terms of longevity in the community. And what I found was that the indigenous entrepreneurs were the ones who were in the community the longest. Their businesses, as I mentioned, were in place for up to 25 years. And because of their longevity, they were able to offer a wide range of services and help to their communities, just besides having their businesses present. In terms of having, you were talking about continuous plans for their businesses. There were strategies that were put in place. One of the unique things to Atlanta, and that I didn't find in some other communities, was that the city council was set up so that there were neighborhood planning units, and the whole city area was kind of divided up, and each of those areas had a business organization, a community business organization. And one of the recommendations that I had was that the city work harder to work with those business organizations, primarily to support the indigenous entrepreneurs, since they were the ones who were in the communities the longest, and to make sure that they had access to city and government contracts, because one of the things that Dr. Boston's research has shown is that when a lot of these smaller businesses have that infusion of capital from city contracts, it does help them establish their businesses and stay in the communities longer. So that was part of their strategy and what they were working towards.
Okay, I think we're right.
Okay.
I think we're
I have a question for Dr. Boston.
Yeah.
In your quarterly surveys of, I believe, the fastest growing black businesses, can you give us a feel for the makeup of those businesses from the standpoint of product-based or service-based? Just a relative percentage.
First of all, let me just describe a little bit more about the survey itself. We identified 1,500 businesses that had a minimum employment growth of 5% over the last 5 years. And so some employment growth ranged from 5%, some was way over 100, 200%. But anyway, this was the minimum pool. And we also then wanted to look at the sort of the entrepreneurial kinds of businesses. So we didn't want to look at the old established businesses. We wanted to look at those businesses that are relatively new and high growth. And so we imposed an employment size of between 10 and 100 workers, looking at really the new kind of high growth sector of businesses. And this is a national survey. We identified the database from Dun & Bradstreet Records, and then we conduct the survey on a quarterly basis. Well, what we found is that the industries that are represented by these businesses within the survey are what we would call, from a business standpoint, really non-traditional kinds of industries. For example, the leading industry that was represented among those businesses was computer sales and services. And secondly, architectural and engineering firms. Thirdly, management public relations firms. Fourthly, business services. So the unique thing about that is that if you look at, again, these high growth businesses, how do they differ from what existed in our community, say maybe 10, 15, 20, or 30 years ago, and the things that, again, John talks about. If you go back, say 25 years ago, mainly what you would see are a cross-section of businesses, but mainly those involved in personal service, retail, and other kinds of enterprises. And what we see now is a whole kind of different entrepreneur that's emerging, that's really at the forefront of growth in terms of innovation and marketing and what have you. So those are the kinds that are represented in terms of the fastest growing sector. Those are the industries that are represented among those fast growing businesses.
Hello, my name is Roy Stannis. I'm from Eastern Phillipson. And I was just on the way to school this morning. I was wondering.
I'm Barbara McDade at the University of Florida. My area, focus area is entrepreneurship among African businesses as well as black-owned businesses in the U.S. And the continuity, which I was really interested in with John as well as Dr. Walker, we've met before. In this particular instance, you mentioned that education, in your last comment, that education was missing as we try to education from the top, the richest persons in America. And I in my research, initially found that there seemed to be an inverse relationship between formal education and entrepreneurs in Africa. Now we're seeing somewhat of a different thing, where the formal sector, more successful business persons are these new MBAs and formally educated people, and the same thing that Dr. Boston was looking at. among African American and African businesses. What is your explanation of the fact that white are the majority business owners? Do we hear that they pursued business instead of going to school, they taking that time? Or what is your explanation of that?
Yeah. Hold on. Hello, my name is Royce Dennis. Hello.
I can only speculate using Bill Gates as an example. 1 year at Harvard, and that was it. But Bill Gates came from a wealthy family. His father invested, in the development of Microsoft. So that perhaps is one, family, access to capital, venture capital, and development capital, because of connections with the white financial world, which is not the case with many black businesses. But as far as education is concerned, what is a distinctive mark of an entrepreneur is the ability to create innovativeness. And I don't know if that necessarily can be taught. We can be taught to think critically and advance a particular situation, but as far as developing new ideas that will lead to the earnings of vast amounts of money. Sam Walton, for example, I'm not sure of his educational background, but he saw that a market existed in areas which the larger companies would not sell, like Sears and so forth. And so the Walton family, the 5 of them together, the widow and 4 children, are, at the top of the Forbes 400. I look at another individual who is quite wealthy, the second wealthiest African American, Oprah Winfrey, and her wealth was achieved before she got her honorary degree at Tennessee State. Here again, an example of the cultural commodification of Black America. Now, as far as African entrepreneurs, interestingly, the top Black entrepreneur in America today is a Nigerian. And I'm not quite sure how many of the Nigerian business people are college educated. So here again, it's innovativeness, but at the same time, for a black person, education would be important because of the kind of respect one would get going to a bank to get a loan. Secondly, now a black business is anything that is 51% owned by blacks. So here again, networking has taken place, and invariably white corporate America has served as a kind of mentorship for many blacks who have started businesses. But here again, it's connection, it's networking. That's the only way I can look at that at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Before we take more questions from IC Squared, we'd like to now go to Auburn University, where I understand that we have questions. If you would, are there questions at Auburn? Okay, let us try Houston Tillotson. Questions?
Yes. Yes, my name is Royce Dennis. I'm from Houston, Tillotson, and this is directed to Karen, Canada.
Raise your hand with
What
questions.
are 1 or 2 research papers?
Go ahead.
What are one or 2 research papers topics you would recommend for a college student who has an interest in African American entrepreneurship and community development?
I apologize, Houston Tillotson. We're having a bit of technical difficulty. So we're going to come back to your question in just a couple of minutes as soon as we get the problem resolved, and we will now go back to questions at IC squared. Let's start at the top over there. Push your button, please.
Okay. My name is Herb Dunlap, and I'm from Houston Tillotson College. My question is for Dr. Butler. I'd like to get you to do a bit of educated prognostication. Now, as we approach the second third of this decade, in light of our recent foreign policy, which I believe, at least in part, has led us to an economic downturn, if the tendency for the United States to align itself with European nations against the Chinese and the Muslim nations continue, do you foresee there being some type of socioeconomic backlash or setback for African Americans due to some type of cultural grouping? Also, the second part of that question is, even that aside, if the current economic trend continues to stay low, do you foresee there to be, again, some type of economic setbacks for entrepreneurial enterprise in our country?
Yes, thank you. Of course, the question relates economics on one time, and how we respond to those things. And also the relationship between America and the emerging countries of the world, such as China, and America's historical relationship with Europe, since America's a natural extension of European culture, especially of English culture, in terms of English institutions, English law, and et cetera. I think I would start by saying the following. Number one, the history of the culture has always been one that responded to conflicts in a certain kind of way. The idea is that everybody is peace-loving, everybody loves freedom, and there's only bad governments. So therefore, this is why America can destroy Germany, because there's nothing wrong with the German people. It was Hitler that was bad. And therefore, we can turn around and give Germany $10 billion to rebuild it. We can destroy the southern population of the United States, because there's nothing wrong with southerners. The government is bad, so therefore you get rid of the bad people, and therefore the people can thrive. This is why we can destroy Japan and turn around and give Japan $10 billion in rebuild. So I think fundamentally, at the purpose and the idea that what guides the country is that everybody loves freedom, and therefore there are only bad governments. So if you can destroy bad governments, then you can survive economically. I think that's true of America. It's true of what America calls the revolutionary. Now, within that context, then, you have always had the emergence of different kinds of countries. And remember that America stopped being an entrepreneurial country in the 1950s and 1960s. In the sense that we lost the automobile industry, we lost steel, we lost rubber, we lost manufacturing, we lost the automobile industry to Japan. So therefore, competition, I think, really hit us in the face. The entrepreneur side of America, I think, began to reemerge again in the 1970s after we lost all those industries. And by the way, it only reemerged in certain areas. Just as there were business enclaves, for example, among black Americans. There have always been business enclaves in America. So Silicon Valley is very different than Delaware, for example. Austin, Texas is very different than Montgomery, Alabama. So what you have in America now, you've got Route 128, you've got Austin, Texas, and you've got Silicon Valley. And most of the great companies have been founded in those areas. Now, the reason for that is that I think is that people began to concentrate on creating entrepreneurs and kind of connecting the universities with the economic reality. I think that we got to remember business cycles when we talk about all these things. That is, the normal curve will get us all. So therefore, if you are in an enterprise, you're always worrying about what's going to happen. Will we go to war? So I just got a friend here who just sold his company for $200 million. He's in the audience. He kept asking me, he said, "You think we're going to have a war before I get this thing done?" So therefore, you have those external kind of events that have a great impact on business cycles in the country. So I think now we are in a down business cycle, and everybody knew that it was coming because the normal curve would get everyone. In terms of America's commitments, I think that the American business community understand the importance of China, and they understand the importance of those markets. I also think that they understand the importance of Africa for labor and also for markets. And I also think they understand that there are problems, for example, in Eastern Europe with the fall of the Soviet Union. How do you create market economies? Remember that the experiment that Soviets had was a failure. And so we are now in another experiment, and that is how can market economies thrive in different kinds of places? Because I cannot make policy for America, but my guess would be this, that the relationship between business and economics will always revolve around what the country calls free government. Theoretical idea is always an experiment. So I can see the continued cooperation with European countries who, by the way, America fought in the 40s. And I can also see the emerging situations with China and Korea and Japan.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. We will now go to Morehouse College. Is there a question from Morehouse? Okay, Morehouse, we apologize once again. We are still having technical difficulties. We'd like to now try Auburn University. Is there a question from there?
Yes, there is a question from Auburn. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello?
A nice little echo.
If we can get you to repeat your question one more time.
The question I have is regarding. All right, the question I have is this is lit.
We can hear you.
Okay, the question I have is regarding access to financial capital, which is obviously important for any entrepreneurial venture. And what I wanted to ask, and I guess Professor Christopher had talked about this a little bit, is what are the most, from her research, what are the most effective institutions in providing credit to African American entrepreneurs, and are those institutional arrangements different for entrepreneurs from other ethnic groups?
Okay, I did hear your question. In the past, if you talk with members of the NAACP, they felt that over the last 100 years it's been government. And so, as I think Dr. Herring was saying, as he was saying, many people attempt to get government contracts in an attempt to augment their businesses. Now, recently, with the proliferation of creditors, if you talk to most legal scholars, they will say that it is your ability to shop around from creditor to creditor, which would enhance your access to capital. As you see on the television commercials about shopping at Learning Tree, because you get 3 or 4 different bids. So today it has become more of a cut and dry financial issue where you need to shop around for the best rates, and if someone rejects you, you go to the next person. So it's your ability to understand the instruments that are out there on the table, to present your case to each of them, I guess, through a business plan, and to shop around for the best rates would augment your ability to increase your success by having higher initial capitalization.
Thank you, and I believe Dr. Butler also has a response to that question.
Oh yeah, there was a great book called Race, Self-Employment, and Upward Mobility by Timothy Bates. And basically, successful black enterprises, household wealth explains the difference. And of course, it's best to talk about, if you look at household wealth, it is immigrant agents or agents who have the most household wealth in America. So therefore, they're more likely to start enterprises, and those enterprises will be successful. The idea of going to a bank, I think, when you look at the research, just unless the enterprise is established, it just, I mean, the purpose of a bank is not to lend money to start an enterprise. The purpose of a bank is to take my deposits and do something else with. I don't want them taking a chance on your crazy ideas, unless, of course, you have established yourself already. So what Timothy Bates argues is that if you look at, you know, and he does it by ethnicity. For example, the Jewish ethnic group as a white group is much more likely than other whites to do this. So when we collapse white America, it gets really confusing, according to Timothy Bates. But he looks at, in terms of black entrepreneurship, the most successful black enterprises are very, very similar to the most successful enterprises in America. That is, they were capitalized at a decent rate. They had household wealth, whether it was retirement, or what have you. And that becomes the most important explanation as to do that. And the book is Race, Self-Employment, and Upward Mobility.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. We can now go back to Auburn University if there's another question. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm wondering, in terms of businesses earlier, Dr. Walker talked about the fact that the Nigerians basically represent a group that has the majority of black businesses in America.
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering whether or not
I'm sorry. Dr. Veal, I'm sorry. We're going to have you repeat that question once again, but we would like to remind all of the video conferencing sites, I think, namely Houston Tillotson, to please put your system on mute when you're not asking questions. And we're going to ask Dr. Veal to please repeat your question one more time.
I just heard earlier that Dr. Walker talked about the fact that the Nigerian businesses, Nigerians represent the largest group of blacks in America in terms of with the majority of businesses. I'm wondering whether or not we would find a pattern of Africans living in America, that is, with relationships to their host to their countries, greater opportunity for businesses or a larger number of businesses compared to African Americans who actually are from America.
Like to address that?
Yes, across the board, the foreign bond are more likely to be self-employed than the native bond. Now, if you go back in the earlier data, it is among all groups in America. If you were born outside of the country, you're more likely to be self-employed. Now, that has kind of changed with women entrepreneurship across all groups. That is, female entrepreneurs created, I think, 60% of all new jobs in America. But if you look at what the Russians are doing now, if you look at the newcomers to America, if you look at Asians, if you look at Africans, if you go to Washington, D.C., and you look at your cab driver who's also getting a PhD in driving a cab, then the point is that the foreign bond has always been more likely to be self-employed than the native bond. And that's true across the board of all groups in America. So the Nigerian effect, and by the way, they're Igbo for the most part. The Nigerian Igbo are more likely to be self-employed than black Americans. And white immigration produced more self-employment than the native born population of whites in America, no matter how you cut it. And the reason for that, of course, is that the hunger of the first generation. Then the second generation, of course, educate their kids away from self-employment. And they go to college, they become lawyers, engineers. The third generation barely makes it through. The fourth generation has to start all over again.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. We will now try to entertain questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Walker.
The first part of the question, if you could repeat it for me and I can respond to it. Okay. I do agree with you that many immigrants tend to be self-employed, primarily because it's very difficult to get a job. And that's an excellent point, because when we look at the historic tradition of black business activity, the inability of black people to find employment is one of the reasons for this persistence of self-help that you have emphasized. Um, as to being a newcomer in the country, finding it difficult to get a job, so you use your initiative to start a business. Another factor should be considered, and that would be cultural values and the absence of, compared to African Americans, of rage and anger. When you're new to a country, you can capitalize on all of those aspects of opportunity that perhaps were denied to you elsewhere. And so this becomes very significant. Now, as to the what group of Nigerians are the most successful, whether they are the Igbo or Yoruba, the top black business person in America, based on receipts, is a Yoruba. So I'm not sure if I answered it because I didn't hear the question in its entirety.
Okay. Thank you for that question and response. I believe now we're going to try to entertain a question from Morehouse College. If we could see them and hear your question, please. Okay. I believe they're going out. So we're back at IC squared. Let's go right here. I saw your hand earlier. Push your button, please.
My name's Keenan Grinnell, and I wear several hats. Assistant Provost for Diversity and Multicultural Affairs at Auburn University, and also Vice Chair of the National Board of Directors for Real Enterprises out of Durham, North Carolina. I'm concerned in terms of the statement that Dr. Walker made about, I guess, the education component and how individuals like Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey had these wonderful characteristics and qualities about themselves that allowed them to be successful. And I guess the reason I'm asking is because, is it possible that we can teach entrepreneurship to a mass number of African Americans, whether they be inner city or whether they be rural pocket poverty stricken? And if so, can there be a national demonstration that will allow us, say, 50 years from now, to be able to see increases in receipts as well as business formations, because we help create a culture of entrepreneurship at a much ground zero level than we've had to look at in years past?
There has always been a culture of entrepreneurship here in the black community. Whether or not you can teach entrepreneurship or success in business, those are two different things. Many people can be successful in business, but these people are not necessarily entrepreneurs in the development of those businesses. So I absolutely agree that success in business can be taught. Can you teach success in developing a particular idea that would be innovative? I don't know. If that could be taught, I think all of us would be out, running and establishing a business. In looking over at the program, I saw that there were two young men who started businesses when they were teens. These were entrepreneurial endeavors. They didn't just pick up on what someone else had done. They developed these businesses themselves. Another example would be the hip-hop entrepreneurs. Sean P. Diddy Combs, Master P. These men, there are lots of people out there in the hip world of hip-hop. But these individuals became the most successful for various kinds of things that they did. So when I say that people can start businesses and not necessarily need an education. I don't think I said that. What I did say was that while the most successful black business people, according to Professor Boston, are those who have college education and advanced degrees. And so consequently, when looking at the correlation between the most successful black businesses, Professor Boston found that these were the ones who had college degrees and higher education. My response to that was that the differences between black business people and white business people is that among the top 400, Forbes 400, that 187 of those individuals did not have a college degree. So I think if a person has that kind of entrepreneurial drive, is a risk taker, has innovative ideas, those people can succeed. College is important in some ways in the sense that it provides you with networks of people that might be useful to you in advancing your business. So I hope that that is clear. I would not want anyone to think that you cannot be taught to be a successful business person. That's one of the things with business schools today. They have taught how to advance white corporate America. And now, as John has said, that America is becoming more entrepreneurial, and now entrepreneurship is taught. For example, the man who founded Federal Express, he was at the Sloan Business School at, he wasn't at Sloan, University of Pennsylvania. He got a B on his business plan because his professor said, oh no, this is not feasible. Oh, okay, now you got to see. So, and that would be another problem of being taught by professors who are not entrepreneurs, who are, have no idea of your vision as an entrepreneur. So, yeah, I hope that's good. And I might add that, as has been mentioned before, that Professor Butler can become a model for what is new in 21st century higher education of the academic entrepreneur, because that's what higher education is about today. Professors could go to work and get paid. Now we have to go and generate our salaries, literally, if we want to go beyond that. So he provides the model for that.
We'll go right here.
I don't have a question, but I want to join in on this discussion around the 50-year model and can we teach entrepreneurship. I certainly echo that we can teach entrepreneurship. I think, though, we should start at a much earlier age. We should be beginning to shape and mold talent at 12 years old versus waiting until they walk across a high school stage or a college or a graduate school. And that if we begin to shape and mold that talent at 12 years old, because what I have learned in my work in incubation is that you have to become proficiency of a skill over a long period of time. And 4 years is not long enough, or 2 years not long enough. So if we were going to put together, Dr. Grinnell, a model and look back at it 50 years later, I would suggest that model should include an indoctrination of a culture change at 12 years old, and to begin and shape and mold that talent all the way up through adulthood and through an educational process, and have that be part of that process. And then lastly, I think with all the academic heads in this room, I'd like to throw out a real challenge, because in working with small businesses and trying to figure out how to increase the business formation rate, one of the biggest challenges I see in urban and rural communities, it's primarily 3 areas. First one being physical infrastructure. We have to figure out ways to increase the physical infrastructure of our rural and urban communities if we're going to increase that business formation rate. And then the second one is political management strategy. Certainly we need to, as a group, collectively figure out how we're going to shape policy. And to give an example, Dr. Christopher, you spoke of SBA. The only instrument I've seen come out of SBA is a 90% loan guarantee program, which is debt. Why not we come together and get the SBA to change that to a 90% guarantee on equity funds that is directed at urban and rural communities in a similar way, because the only thing they have is a debt instrument, and we need more equity in urban and rural communities. And then lastly, the only other thing that I see that we can begin to shape business formation is to figure out ways in which we can help them get there faster. This whole business development process in urban communities take too long because we don't have the infusion of capital. And as you say, Dr. Walker, we don't have the networks. And it takes us too long. So if we're going to take someone through from startup to infancy to mature, we got to do that in less than 3 years. Now it takes people like myself 5 years to do that. And I'd like to work with everybody in this room to figure out how do we shorten that process and do all the other things I mentioned, because we have to figure out how to shape policy. Thank you.
We'll go right up there, and then we'll get to Dr. Green right here. Yeah.
I'd like to address this question actually to the panel as a whole, if possible. How has the downturn, if at all, in the U.S. economy today perhaps further limited minorities and women from entering the market, well, entering any specific market and opening their own businesses?
Patricia Green could probably answer that. The latest data from the Kauffman Foundation is that I think Black Americans have the highest entry rate. Black Americans have the highest entry rate in entrepreneurship into the creation process. That's right. So, and I think that's followed by Black Americans and then Latinos. So therefore, what we find in the data is this: the downturn creates entrepreneurs if one is thinking in the right kind of tradition. So therefore, the recent survey that was released by the Kauffman Foundation in terms of Black Americans has the highest number of people trying to start an enterprise. But after 4 years, it drops off considerably. So I think the time to start an enterprise, by the way, is when things are down, because everything is cheap. So therefore, if you want to start an enterprise, then you start when it's down. For example, if you look at the economy now, what we're doing at IC Square, we're just trying to get everything in place, whether it's nanotech, whether it's biotech, and we deal a lot with fast-moving enterprises. So the time to get things together, incubation, for example, Della mentioned the whole infrastructure. When IC Square started, then we had an entrepreneur from Dallas to give us a building. Because the office space was empty. Washington.
Miles has a question.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Our lines with Morehouse and Auburn are down, and so now we have IC Squared and Houston Tillotson. And if there is not a question at Houston Tillotson, we will stick with our questions at IC Squared. Okay. So we have Dr. Green.
My question is, I'm wondering if for a few moments we can move from the retrospective aspects of where we've all built from John's work and ask some of the panel members, and particularly John, what are the big questions of the future? Where should our research be going next?
The 21st century is what we deal a lot with here at IC Square. And as Professor Boston knows, if you look at enterprises in general, then it's gone from sort of the service enterprises to the high-tech enterprises, and that's kind of where we are now. I think that what we're looking at is we're looking at how the new technologies will actually change what we do in America. And remember that the enterprises that we study today were not around 15 or 20 years ago. Especially the major enterprises. There was no Nike, there was no Dell Computer, there was no Microsoft. We think the incident of high-tech entrepreneurship, which of course has a big impact on service enterprises, etc., would be in the nanotechnology, and the biotechnology and biomanufacturing. We also think that this is going to be nationwide in terms of wealth creation and in terms of job creation. For example, in Austin, when those enterprises are scaled, for example, when Dell Computer becomes a big enterprise, of course, Dell sort of started around here. then other kinds of service enterprises also develop. So you need people who essentially do boxes. You need people who essentially deliver stuff. You need better restaurants. The arts have got to be better. The golf courses increases and those kind of things. So consequently, we're looking to here at IC Square to scale from the laboratory the next generation of business enterprise. It doesn't mean, of course, that traditional enterprises and service enterprises would not be here. But for example, the University of Texas at Austin is raising about $52 million for nanotech and biotech. We are really serious about looking at those enterprises. The other thing is that if you look at just the data on enterprises, it's obvious that people are really concerned and really involved in creating something for themselves. It's tough out there in corporate America. Small enterprises have created most of the jobs in America. The layoffs are horrendous in corporate America. And what that has done is to allow people to really think about entrepreneurship. So on the one hand, you have all this high-tech stuff. Nanotech, biotech, and it is emerging, and I think it's where the computer industry was in the 1980s. On the other hand, you have people really starting the kinds of enterprises that's necessary for us to have different kinds of services. What I would like to do, Professor Green, in the 21st century is somehow get manufacturing back in America to create certain kinds of jobs. I think that everything goes in a cycle. I think that the layoffs, as I said, have provided different kinds of opportunities. But I would like to see purses. I would like to see shoes. I would like to see clothing. I would like to see radios. I would like to see television. I would like to see golf clubs made in America again. Now, that's a tough one because of the relationship between the mobility of enterprises and, of course, the price of labor. When I'm in Japan, the Japanese talk about the price of labor, and they talk about Northern Africa, talk about Southern Africa, and the price of labor. If you look at what has happened in the former Soviet Union, where the poverty rate is 90+%, people are looking at that labor cost. So I think we might be in a cycle for the 21st century where the price of labor would have to sort of start over, if you will. If not, we would become a country basically where there are few opportunities. And I can see actively out-migration to other countries where the jobs are. So Professor Green, I think we should always look ahead. And there's one thing we must remember. The enterprises that we study today, for the most part, were not around 30 and 40 years ago.
Can I add a little bit to that as well? In terms of big issues, and some of these are tied into what John just mentioned, but one of the big issues, we kind of touched on it a little bit when we were talking here, but one issue is, where do black enterprises go in terms of raising equity capital? We talk a lot about equity capital, but equity capital raises a number of questions. One is, we know that businesses, after businesses get to a certain threshold, in order for those businesses to continue to grow, they need injections of equity capital, i.e. they need to go public, or they need to merge, or they need to be acquired, or something like that. That raises issues in terms of patterns of ownership. We've had historically people concerned about even having very closely held corporations, primarily because they wanted to maintain the ownership of those corporations. Well, what this essentially means is that to get to the next level, we got to confront different kinds of issues. That is, you can't have this closely held corporation if you also want to raise equity. That raises other kinds of questions. And the other question it raises is, in fact, how much access do we have to that equity? I know, in fact, two very successful enterprises in Atlanta operating at about $25 million annually. And these enterprises have been in existence for over 10 years, and yet they have been trying to go public for about 5 years and haven't been able to raise the equity in order to do that. So there's still those kind of significant barriers that exist, and I've had some extensive conversations with the CEOs of both of those companies. and they attribute that to no other reason than the fact that, they're owned by African Americans. I mean, they don't feel that they get the same kind of access as non-African American companies would have. So one big issue is equity, and there are a lot of dimensions related to equity. The second big issue is government contracting. Over the last 15 years, a large number of successful African-American owned companies have been able to enter the market primarily through government contracts. In other words, if you look at large construction contracts and large engineering firms, architectural firms and what have you, those firms, by and large, would not exist had they not been able to get involved in large-scale public works contracting. And there are a lot of other areas, not just that, but also, for example, finance, computer sales and services, and office supplies and other kinds of things. Those programs are under attack. And in fact, by and large, they've been eliminated. So what does that mean for the continued growth and survival of those companies? And then what are the alternative strategies that we need to pursue in the absence of government contracting to keep those companies growing and viable? And then the other issue is the issue of strategic partnership. That is, how do we address strategic partnerships as an alternative strategy so that, for example, businesses like John mentioned, they can begin to get into network into the supply chain of other kinds of businesses so that they're able to become successful by virtue of establishing partnerships and not have to raise the kinds of resources internally that it would take in order to be successful, with the partner with other kinds of businesses. So I think that those are, if you ask me what are three big issues, I think those are three big issues and three big challenges that we need to address.
Thank you, Dr. Boston. Unfortunately, our time is up for this particular part of the symposium. I'd like to thank each member of the panel for their contributions. Thank you. And for those of you who have questions remaining, we apologize that we did not get to you, but I'm sure that if you were to approach one of the panel members after we conclude, they'd be more than happy to answer your question. Thank you.
What's your phone number?
Don't go anywhere.
Email address? Hello? I dial on Dr. Matthews.
We're still on. You want to cut?
Is someone here in Morehouse College anywhere?
Sorry, Morehouse, are you there?
Yes. Are we here? We here. Can you hear us?
I'm sorry, we can hear you on the third floor of IC squared. On the first floor of IC squared, they cannot hear you, so I will have somebody be in touch with you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the conference is over.
I believe it is closing down now, yes. You want to give me your name and number, and I will have Karen Canada be in touch?
Yes, S. Stoney, Stoney.
Uh-huh. I've got that.
Okay, the Department of Sociology.
Uh-huh.
404-215.
Uh-huh.
2746. This is Morehouse College.
Stoney, at Morehouse. Stoney, what's your last name?
Stoney. I, Stoney, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, please. Excuse me. Before we get ready,
yes,
break this, I'm going to have you come up.
Okay, I'll have
Before we
Karen Canada be in touch.
get ready to
Thank you.
go
I'm so
upstairs
sorry.
for lunch. As you know, in working with this conference, because John is here, there have been quite a few things that he has been aware of in terms of how this conference was developed. We've tried to have a few surprises for him throughout this conference, and one of the surprises that we have, I would like to have Dr. Danny Boston come up and make his announcement regarding one of the outcomes of this conference. So, Dr. Boston, I'll let you come on up.
I'm pleased. I serve as, among other things, editor of the Review of Black Political Economy. It's a journal that's published at Rutgers University and by Transactions Publishers. And I spoke with the editors at Transactions and have gotten their approval to publish a special issue of the review that will be a collection of papers presented by panelists and other individuals at this conference that will go into the special issue, and that issue will be in honor of John Butler. Karen will be the Karen will be the guest editor, and the good thing about it is that what we do in special issues like that is we release it initially as a special issue, and then secondly it comes out in book form, and so that it'll get even wider dissemination. And Karen, I'll be working with Karen with it, but Karen is a special guest editor for that. And again, we had a conversation with several individuals last night that were interested in making contributions to that special issue. And for those of you who might be interested in doing that, please contact me or contact Karen, and we're going to try to get this rolling. And there are so many innovative and creative ideas coming out. And again, the special issue will be something that will have two parts. One, both contributions on the academic part, the scholarly part, but also contributions from practitioners, so that an individual can pick it up and find something that would be very useful and very beneficial for them, both in their scholarly work as well as in their practical work. So again, and it'll be in honor of John Butler.
Okay. When Danny mentioned that idea to me, we were emailing and getting this whole thing planned, and when he told me about his idea, I emailed him back and said, "You made my day," you know, in terms of looking at what to do and trying to find ways to continue to honor John for his contributions. At this time, we will go ahead and break, and lunch will take place on the 3rd floor in Seminar A. It's set up, and from there we'll eat first, and then we will have a video and then the presentation by our keynote speaker, Mr. George Hill. So thank you. There's an elevator. Oh, they want 5 minutes? Okay, well, they want about 5 more minutes to finish setting up, so you're free to mingle down here, and we'll let you know when we can go on up. They continue and they try to ask questions if you didn't hear them down here.